Some paths lead you through straight and narrow. Others have bumps and turns. And sometimes the path can lead you to the rest of your life. Welcome to Ending the Stigma, a path to recovery. Okay, everybody, welcome back to Ending the Stigma, a path to recovery. I'm your host, Fredd Carroll, and with me again is Scott H Silverman, crisis coach, family navigator, author, and all those other good things that go with it. How are you today, Scott?
Good. I like to say with you again, almost as if you thought I might not be here.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to turn off my air conditioner because I think it's feeding back in. So,
you know, I've got a fan on too. Let me know if it's coming from my end.
Yeah. Entertain the folk.
Okay.
There's only one person watching, so entertain the folk.
All right. So where are we? Today is August 11th, 2021. It's, close to the middle of summer. School's starting around the country. The new COVID variant is shaking hands all over the country. Jobs are up, unemployment's down. The fighting at legislative leadership level continues back and forth, and the friction continues as well. And we as a human race seem to be more frustrated than we have been in a long time. So, today my suggestion is take 5 deep breaths with your eyes closed. And if you're in California, please don't do that when you're behind the wheel. Be sure and make sure that you're at a stoplight or a stop sign, and do some breathing and do some listening and find a quiet space to maybe take a few minutes to yourself. And tomorrow, don't set the alarm and jump out of bed. Take a couple of minutes and rise slowly, and know that if no one's told you yet this week or this month that they love you, Fred and I love you. So
oh, yes,
that's my happy thought for today. I mean, last week was a little bit of a rant. I'm a little calmer today because we have high humidity here, and I just finished a cup of coffee. So I'm purposely trying to talk slow and not perspire.
Yeah, well, it's very hot here. We're going through a heat thing. But I did want to try, since we got 2 people here, maybe they could help us along. I'm going to try to play a video. It's like a 5-minute video. We tried this before, and I failed. When I killed our mics, it killed the sound. So I'm not going to kill our mics this time. And let's see if this works, because I want people to see this, because I think it's something very good. So let's drag this in and let's check it out.
I got no sound at my end, Fred.
Well, I could hear it, but
really?
I'm not sure.
Well, if you can hear it, I should be able to hear it.
Well, we're going to find out in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, it says no. They're saying no sound, so that's okay. Everybody gets to look at you. But I could remove it. So for some reason, same time as last time. I don't know why I can't get sound out of these things. I'll figure it out eventually. Are
you running it through your Rodecaster?
Yeah, this is basically your YouTube channel. It's a share. Right. It's a share screen,
right?
And it's no different than the opening and stuff when I share the opening. So who knows why it does it?
No, but are you running it? Are you running it through your Rodecaster?
I'm running. Yeah, it should be running through.
Put some of your volume, because sometimes on mine I've had some issues where I forgot to put one of my volumes up because it's coming through a different channel than your microphone is. So make sure all your volume controls are up. That may be where the sound isn't coming through.
Yeah,
could be.
Well, let's try. Let's try while we're here. This is a big test while we're live.
I'm all yours for 30 minutes, brother.
Let's see.
Get those volume controls up. And make sure the 4 volume controls on the right and the master's up, and also your sliders. It could be the USB one, depending upon how you have it run through. Look at that tiny microphone on my face. Wowee.
Yeah.
By the way, this was 2011, 10 years ago.
Well, I got everything cranked up and it's not. So, but eventually we will get it. You do look good though. You look good.
Yeah.
So people could go to YouTube and they could just, if you type Scott H. Silverman, you could see his TEDx talk. I wanted people to see the TEDx talk.
Yeah, you can just type in TEDx Scott H. Silverman and it will pop up somewhere in the public domain. You know, it's a good thing we don't call ourselves professionals yet, Fred, because we're still in that learning curve.
Yeah, well, it's all enjoyable. And unfortunately, the only way to test this stuff is to actually do it live. It's the only way you'll know if it's actually working. There's no you can't do it as a test between you and me and stuff because everything sounds great on my end. I can't tell what's going out to the people. And I don't know, I don't, even by looking at the, all the volume controls and all that stuff, everything seems fine. But Chris says it's all good with trial and error. But that's what we are. So we're just human beings trying to help people. And unfortunately, we're not able to always do it. And, that's how it is. But, you got, I see your dog is there too.
Yeah, somebody just stopped by.
That's okay.
Yours is here repairing our Error 21 on our washing machine.
Oh, yeah. Well, Error 21, huh?
Yeah, you gotta love that. They were supposed to be here last week, right? So, they give you this 5-hour window. And last week they never showed up. So we called and called and called and got another appointment a week later. So, I am probably wearing the same shirt I had on last week, but that's just the way it is.
That's okay.
Just the way it is. Yeah.
So we were talking earlier, you and I, before we went live, about the continued difficulty of people asking for help and stuff. Is this something I'm starting to see it at an alarming rate of personal friends who, and I had mentioned to you that I get a little better feeling around since I'm more aware of mental health. It's more of an assumption, but I'd rather be wrong, I guess, and say something than write and go to their funeral. And it's one of those things where I don't really have the tools yet to interject. And it's something that's still plaguing the world, not even just the United States. I'm sure it's worldwide, the suicide issue and people dealing with issues and trauma and the COVID stuff. So what is some more continued advice on asking for help?
Well, it's funny because Chris and I were talking about this earlier on a text about, talking to some of the hard to serve without being confrontational. And what I've just learned over the years is, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. One of the best things one can do is listen. If someone, you're sitting with somebody, then share from your heart that what you're seeing, what you're hearing scares you. So you personalize it for you rather than making it a judgment of what you might be seeing. And then hopefully from that, you have to be quiet. You just literally shut up and listen. And hopefully from that next steps, the reaction, the response, that the individual will open up a little bit. And that's assuming that they're comfortable enough in their own skin, which they probably aren't, but they trust you. And then maybe the conversation can move forward because it can get, people get very defensive. And of course there's a stigma around admitting we have a problem, which is why, especially with mental health issues and with addiction and depression and anxiety, we don't just start telling people. I mean, you hear people complain, I hate this. Well, what's going on? How can I help? And sometimes just being soft-spoken and doing more listening than talking, you might get a conversation started. But as you were sharing earlier, Fred, you're seeing it more and more. Yes, you have a heightened awareness, but I also think the average person who maybe had a coping skill at, let's say, a 7 or 8 a year and a half ago, it may have dropped to 3 or 4. And the reason for that is we're overwhelmed right now, between the, what's going on with COVID and masking, not masking. And of course, if you're a parent with children, this whole issue about getting kids to school in a safe way. And I'm not making a political statement. It can be overwhelming right now. And if you're a single parent and you're trying to figure out a way to get yourself back to work and to do what you need to do and support your children, and then you've got parents who maybe are elderly and you're taking care of them as well, in an environment right now where, if you turn on the TV, if you're not watching a comedy, you're probably watching something pretty serious. And if you're watching the news, they don't usually talk about things that are positive and good things that are going on, because that doesn't really make the news. So listen, personalize your fear for them, and hope that they'll share a little bit with you, and, do some more listening, and maybe the conversation will grow from there.
Isn't it weird how the human, it is human nature to keep your eyes on a tragedy, and stuff like that. I remember when Desert Storm first started and CNN was showing live video. It was like watching war from your, it was captivating, and you watched and watched and watched. But if you ever watch newscasts like Nightline or something like that, the 7 o'clock news, the national news, they have bad story after bad story. Biden did this, Trump did this, blah, 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 unemployment. And then they end it with the 2-minute love reel of the week or something like that, like the happy ending. But they never put that happy thing at the beginning of the news. It's never, let's go to our reporter where a woman received a dozen roses. They always put it at the end. And they know from doing analytics that that's human nature for some reason.
Yeah. Well, you notice I started with our ending with in our beginning today about sharing about love, just to throw everybody off, because normally, one of us is either crankier than the other. We go off somewhere. But the idea, to your point, is, for some reason, good, uplifting, positive news is not as contagious as having that, destructive, negative conversation. So I really encourage people, because when you think about it, if you're having a tough time and you say to yourself, what am I going to do about this? Well, the odds are you're not going to be able to fix it yourself. So when you have to look outside yourself, you have to be careful, but you also have to be willing. And then if you're willing to talk to somebody, and there's a lot of clinical experts around the country, and you always promote a hotline, crisis hotline. You can always call them and just talk to somebody. Call us, call me. We can sit and talk. And, if nothing else, I'll give you a few minutes whenever I possibly can. And the phone number is right there on the screen. So, and I turn my phone off at night. It's funny. The other day I had 9 phone calls from somebody between 1:15 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. And I tried to call them back the next morning, and, their voicemail was full. But I have not heard from them yet, but look, they have my number. So at least they were reaching out. But, I don't keep my phone next to my bed for a reason, because I do some national things, and I always call everybody back within 12 to 14 hours. I like to do that because it's who I am and what I do. Plus, in my world, when I hear somebody else is struggling, it helps, it helps me too.
Yeah, it does. I did see something, and I won't mention any names, somebody that's involved with both you and me. We know who this person is, and I'll tell you off air, but they were causing somebody also close to us to think they were in danger of hurting themselves. Okay. With posts they put online and stuff. Right. So this person reached out to the other person. I'm talking so vaguely because I don't want to use names because it's not fair to them. But
I think I know who you're talking about.
Well, you probably do. Well, you definitely do. But when this person reached out to him, they said, do me a favor, call me tomorrow. Okay. So he called tomorrow, no answer. And he went on Facebook, and he, the good doer that was trying to help the person went on Facebook and said, this is a person that treated me very poorly in my life, but I figured I'd reach out to him since nobody else was. Is he just messing with me, or is he crying wolf? And I think he was crying wolf, and that's another dangerous trait. Trying to determine when they're crying wolf and when they're not. I think this person did the right thing by reaching out regardless. I think you have to do that and let them suffer the consequence on the other side of crying wolf. But people will stop reacting to you if you keep dramatically faking it, so there's such a thin line with this mental health and suicide and when to help, when not to help, who not to help, who wants help, who really doesn't want help, and who's just going through a moment, who's really suffering. So it's difficult to navigate all the lines. Maybe we need one of those like meters on people's foreheads so we could judge, like a mood ring almost, like it turns a different color so we could actually know they need help. This person needs help.
Yeah, no, I think I shared a couple of weeks ago about somebody who reached out to me and we had a great conversation, and they said, you're the first one who's actually responded, and I really appreciate taking my call. And then I introduced them to my buddy Chris, and he went out to help them, and they just got upset and said, you're not helping me the right way. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And then they send me this scathing 8,000 word text about what a bad person I am. Someone who's a hopeless helper like I am. I have to be careful as well to set my own boundaries. But, whenever somebody calls me, and, I've got people out there I don't want to talk to, but if they were to call me, I would do everything I could. If I couldn't, if my mindset wasn't real enough, and I'm not a therapist, so it's not part of what I do as a professional, but I do help listen and help people navigate. I'll do everything I can, because I don't want to see anybody ever, do something inappropriate or act out in a way that could harm themselves or others if there's something I could have done at that moment to be of service.
Right. So was the 8,000 word text at least spoken in proper English?
Yeah. This person was very articulate, good punctuation, good semantics, and grammatically correct. If you want to forward it to you, it's just unbelievable. They decided I was their new enemy that day, and then they had some cross-border issues. There was a couple lawyers involved, and they were getting evicted. Anyway, sometimes people, look, to your point, sometimes people are not ready for help or ready to be helped or really don't necessarily want help. It's kind of like, I'm sure everyone has experienced this where you see a homeless person, or you've run into a homeless person, or you experienced a homeless person, they look hungry, and you go get them some food. I mean, I've had this happen a lot, but my awareness around that population is a little different than most. And I bring food to them, and they throw it back at me and go, "Do I look hungry?" It's like, well, no, I just thought maybe you might be later. Because when I walked by earlier, you asked for money. Well, yeah, I need some money. And okay. Can I ask why? Well, I want to get high. Okay. Then would you like me to take the meal back? I'll give it to somebody else. I mean, I've had those kind of conversations with people, and there are people out there that, because they're out in the street a lot in certain places, high density, high traffic business districts, they get a lot of food. And what they're really looking for is some money, if you will, to buy booze or to buy drugs. And, I don't want to overgeneralize, but probably 85% of the time, that's probably an accurate observation. So, but when it comes to, real situations, people in your family, it's weather goes cold, weather goes hot, it makes people moody. If people are sleep deprived, if people are depressed or anxious or uncertain about what's going on in the world, I mean, what we've experienced as a planet this last 2 years, the human race has never gone through. So we're, around the world, we're globally, in this situation where, if we were all helping each other, we'd certainly be a lot better off, in my opinion. A lot further down the road anyway. I don't know if we'd be better off, but we'd certainly be a lot less alone, and we wouldn't have the chronic reoccurring levels of emotional pain that a lot of us are going through one time or another.
Is the addiction that's tied to homelessness, is it present before they're homeless and then made them or contributed to them being homeless? Or is it more common that they become an addict after being homeless and use the drug to just pass the time, to kill the night, kill the day, get to tomorrow?
It's a good question, and I think it's probably mixed. There are people who, are chronic substance abusers suffering from addiction. Their substance use disorders have amplified, and in order to get high, they have to find resources to do that. And they, not going to find themselves, living or couch surfing or being with family members, or they get kicked out of the house, or they just get angry or upset, or they don't feel wanted, or maybe even abused, and they leave. So at the end of the day, it's a mixture out there. But to your point, once you get out there, just trying to get through each day and get high, or let me use a different way of putting it, self-medicate, whatever that might be defined as, it helps them get through the day. It's just, we have overdoses right now going on in our local jail system like we've never seen before. People are smuggling fentanyl in, or fentanyl's getting smuggled in, and people are overdosing. So it's something that's new that's going on now. I mean, there's always been some form of drugs, or people make alcohol in jail or prison, but the fentanyl right now, 8 or 10 people all of a sudden overdose on a cell block, it becomes a real problem. And that's making the news here. And I'm sure it's happening across the country as well.
Yeah. And it happens.
And these aren't homeless. These aren't homeless people. These are people who are sheltered. They have access to health care. Yes, they're in jail and prison. And, obviously they are acting out inappropriately, but, I've not spent time there. But if I was homeless and I was living on the street, I don't think I would be comfortable, meditating in the morning and taking walks in the afternoon, and then going back to, the urine-soaked grounds that I was at the night before for safety reasons. I would probably do what most of them are doing out there. And there, of course, there's some that are so, needy in the way of, low disabilities that they really need a higher level of care, and they don't even know how to navigate to get themselves out of the street into a place. But, some communities are doing a better job than others. But, San Diego, Southern California is not doing a great job.
Yeah, I see Chris just mentioned something, how the term homelessness is misused, in his opinion, of course. And it reminded me of that new movie where now I can't think of her name. It's a great movie that's out about a woman who just lives in her van traveling.
Oh yeah. She got wasn't that an award-winning movie?
Yeah,
right?
Great movie. But her niece at one time asked her why she's homeless, and she says, "Oh dear, I'm not homeless. I'm just houseless." Right. That's what she says. And that there is a difference. She chooses to live on the road in a vehicle that, and that's her life. But she doesn't claim to be homeless. So it wasn't addiction based, unless the addiction. But the movie does talk about there is trauma involved in her life, with losing her husband caused this. Losing a job. So it is an interesting debate. There's so many debates that my head can't wrap around everything, like the Narcan, how it saves people's lives. And we know we're here to end the stigma of judging people off this. But how many times do you save the same person? Does it become a crutch after a while? Do they just know, well, I'm going to do this heroin, and if something happens, they're going to save me? Is there a limit? What do you end up doing? And I'm sure the ambulance people who saved the same person 7, 8, 9 times don't rush to the scene that's human nature. That's part of crying wolf in its own way.
Well, and emergency departments, they call them frequent flyers. They see people some 3 times a week. And when they leave, because they know they were an overdose victim, they give them Narcan to take with them. So yes, and this was talked about years ago, how Narcan will enable heroin users to go ahead and take the risk of getting high, because now their buddy can keep Narcan in their pocket and revive them. But we've never seen, in my opinion, the overdose rate that we're seeing now because of fentanyl. But fentanyl is a poison. There's a difference, in my opinion. Fentanyl is 80 to 100 times stronger than morphine, 50 times stronger than heroin, and the stuff that's made in the streets, you have no idea what the mix is or the cocktails they've made. So that's why we're seeing such a great amount of overdose deaths right now, because people are getting a hold of the street fentanyl that's killing them, and they think they're taking something else that's actually cut with fentanyl, because fentanyl is so much more addictive. So think about it. If you're a supplier, you want to make sure you get your consumer addicted, because then they're coming back for more.
Right. And Chris is saying a few things, about being their primary not being a shelter. Their primary problem is shelter, but their underlying problems are more impactful, and seeking a home does not solve their problem when they don't have a job, when they don't have skills, when they don't have clean lifestyle and all that. So getting a home won't solve it. It's the steps you have to take to get them to live.
Yeah, I think it's Colorado that actually started, they call it housing first. It's a housing first. It's a big wave across HUD and the federal government. Communities adopted it. And what they're finding is some of the communities where they don't have the overarching resources, but they can get them into a house because the theory is it gets them off the street. The problem is some of them are living alone with untreated trauma, without a clinical support team, without going through any kind of substance use disorder treatment because they're not being mandated, or they might even be on a harm reduction program where they're actually given booze, each day by a case manager, and then they go back to their room. And isolation is not a good place for people who are suffering from any kind of mental health disorder or self-medicating. There's the present CEO of the Rescue Mission in Los Angeles, one of the largest populations of homeless in the country. He even said after 35 years, he can't believe that these housing first programs are actually putting people into housing under a harm reduction umbrella, and they're giving them booze every day. And they're expecting people to stay inside, live a different life, but they're not giving them life skills. They're not making it mandatory to be tested because they're giving them medication, if you will, to stay medicated. But people aren't going to just stay in their homes. And so far, the experiment, in my opinion, I think the results are out, but a lot of outcomes right now is putting people in a place by themselves. It's not a great model. I mean, all the anonymous programs, in my opinion, and I'm in one and been in one for decades, really works better than a lot of treatment programs simply because you're in a social model where you're kind of held accountable through your attendance in the program. And you could really see it this last year and a half when in-person meetings went away, and we got onto Zoom, and I was going 4 times a week, 5 times a week, and still try to. And not having that socialization, not having that social connection, not having that human touch as human beings doesn't work really well for us. And I think I've shared with you, we had some, high level medical professionals take their own life because, and my assumption is, or one of them is, that their personal practice of helping others basically went away with COVID, meaning they weren't seeing clients, which is how they kind of relieved, their pressure. I like that saying, pressure busts pipes. So even from a clinical perspective, we've seen a lot of people who have had a lot of difficulties because if you're in the people helping business and you can't help people, how do you fill that void?
Yeah. So what is not being an addict anytime in my life? What is the value? Where does the addict find relief in the anonymous program? What makes them go 4 or 5 times a day or a week?
Well, I'll just tell you personally, when I go to a meeting, I hear other people's stories. I kind of laugh about this. I'll give you my quick analogy. Half the people go to meetings because they want to hear how bad it is with other people. The other half go there because they really need to hear the message. And everyone and anyone who's in a meeting, as long as there's time, they can raise their hand and share. And when you're sharing about what's going on in your world, you're kind of leaving the stuff that's racking at you in the room, so to speak, and sharing it with others. And then others, if they have your phone number and you're going to a regular group, they'll call you, they'll reach out, they'll extend the hand. That's the social model where it's like call it a club, call it a service club, call it a gang, whatever you want to call it a family. I mean, and that's what it is people in recovery who have all kind of been there and done that. So they kind of empathize with whatever's going on with you. And if they're working any kind of program themselves, they're not going to judge you because they've been there and they've done that. So having that kind of an audience in a meeting, to me, is very helpful and healthful. And it's also very, helps you become grateful because there's somebody, I can go to a meeting anywhere in the world and I can sit in a room with other people and I have an idea of where they've been. I think about that for a club. It's kind of unusual. So I stay connected to it because of that. And I run a treatment center, and we don't necessarily make that what everybody has to do. We give them that as an option. And if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't, find something else, but don't try to use your brain that got you to that place to help you make your life's decisions until you've got some basic skill sets so you can make that decision. So bottom line is, it's a safe place. It's supposed to be. It's a comforting place. And it's a place that, it's hard to feel alone when you're listening to the people that have been through what you've been through. And you're also hearing from them what they did to get better, to be better, and to feel better.
So honestly, it's kind of a stupid question, but there are no stupid questions here because we're trying to reveal things. But you, as somebody who's been sober 38 years now, is that what you are? 38 years. You honestly still wake up days and think, boy, I could use a drink today? I mean, is the addiction that strong?
That's not something that happens to me. I mean, there's sometimes I have what's called using dreams, where I have a dream. It might have been back in the day or a flashback, or hear some song that triggers something, but it's not, I don't wake up and go, boy, I wish I had a bottle of whiskey around or some Southern Comfort or tequila. I don't have those kind of urges. And I think part of the reason I don't is because I stay connected to my recovery program that works with me and for me. I have a sponsor. I sponsor people. And I do things like this. I mean, I feel real grateful. I mean, imagine being in a place where you can help others. It's hard. It's hard. They say it's when you're working on a program of recovery, it's hard to think about getting loaded. Does that make sense? So
yeah. Oh yeah.
And what you do with recovery, in my opinion, is you bank it. Meaning, the more meetings I go to, the more reserves I have. And when I have a bad day, what used to maybe take me days to figure out, I can do in hours now, over time. And that's what recovery has given me the gift of, is the ability to process, the ability to be of service, to help others, and also to know that there's no excuse. I have a place to go. I can call people. I have a phone list with hundreds of names, and anybody on that list, I know if I call them, will take my call or return my call, and will be willing to listen. So whether they've only been in the program a month or a week or 2 weeks or 2 years, they're willing to do that, because that's part of the commitment of the social model. Once again, no matter what the program is, social models are like that as well. And when you think about holistically, they say it takes a village, and you look around the world globally, the Native Americans did that. They sit as families and tell stories and share stories, and having that family contact, is what keeps people, in my opinion, from blowing up internally, pressure bust pipes.
Right.
So, but when you're talking about what's going on, it's a lot easier to deal with what's going on.
The way, when I look at somebody that is an addict or a recovering addict and don't understand it, whether it's anxiety, depression, things I don't deal with, does the addict or the depressed person look at me the same and say, how could he just drink one beer? They won't judge you, but they might wonder what's wrong with you, or they'd say to themselves, there's no way I would have partied with that guy. But those are the things that I would say, not hanging out with Fred. I mean, he's going to be asleep at 9 and I'll just be grinding up and getting ready to go at 10. So don't bring Fred out. Plus he's cheap and he's only going to buy one drink and it'll be for himself. So Scott,
he's off the list.
I still have 4 beers from a 6-pack I bought at the Super Bowl in February.
Yeah, well,
that's the type of drinker I am.
And I don't understand that kind of, thinking. What's wrong with you?
Right. And I honestly, the last drink I had, I don't know. I didn't even drink on my birthday, and it was my birthday the other day, just so everybody could say happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday. I think I said happy birthday a couple of times.
Of course. 52. I'm 52, Scott. Just a baby, right?
That is, wait, 10, 6, that's 15 years younger than me.
Yeah. So you were just starting your issues when I was born, basically. 15, 16. Is that when the drinking started and stuff?
Yep.
So maybe you could blame me. Maybe it's the birth of me that caused you to have your problems. You don't know.
Yeah, we would probably need a very significant sponsor for me to wrap my arms around that one, Fred.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's going to end it this week, Scott. But I think it's once again, we had a very good conversation considering we write nothing down and have any plan going into it, and even play a video that has no sound, you know, again. But now I'm going to do a deep dive and figure this out. I promise I'll figure it out, because I think it's important. If you go on YouTube, anybody out there, you could just type the word addiction and you will go down a rabbit hole of people telling you their stories. But I want to share some of those stories on our show, so we have discussion more, so you could see something as more of the expert in this and say, yes, I recognize that this is very common. And, and it teaches me it at the same time. And it also lets people hear a different voice besides mine.
There you go.
Which always makes people happy. So this is Ending the Stigma, Path to Recovery. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, in audio form. I replay this video several times during the week. If you could please share it and support it, and like our friend Chris does here. And we understand that addiction is a 24/7. It's a 24/7, 365 problem. Unfortunately, Scott and I can only be here a half hour to an hour every week. So I'm going to share it at 3 a.m. I'm going to share it at 5 a.m. because I know the addicts are there. And if we could reach one of them and help them, we're fine with that. But we'd rather reach hundreds and help them, because in turn, it's just they're going to become saviors at the same time and help. So I want to thank everybody. Make sure you go buy Scott's book. That is this one right here, The Opioid Epidemic. It's available on Amazon or through his website, which you could go visit right. Where is it? Right here, yourcrisiscoach.com. And if you want to reach out to Scott via text or anything, you could do that by dialing 619-993-2738. He does shut his phone at night, but he returns all your calls. So if you leave a message, he will return your call or text. If you have any questions at all for him, if you're struggling with a problem, if you're a parent that needs a little guidance, he could do that. And he also has a show called Happy Hour with Scott H. Silverman. So find that on Apple Podcasts also, and other places, I believe. So that is it for Ending the Stigma. I am Fredd Carroll. You are Scott H. Silverman. And what do you say to end the show, Scott?
I say, if no one has told you they love you today, Fredd and I love you today.
We love you. Okay, everybody, thank you for watching. And sometime next week, we will be live again. Thank you, Scott. And
Thank you,
we will talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.